All right, it's 2:02. Guys, welcome to our webinar. I'm going to introduce myself. Jason will introduce himself, and then we're going to get going. So a little bit about me. My name is Jeannette Mazur. It rhymes with laser. I have been in technology, working in technology for 15 years and libraries for about 10 years. I've worked public, private, academic libraries. I'm currently at the private library for Baker Hostetler. I'm in Baker Hostetler out of Cleveland. And I'm going to be talking to you about the AI part of Excel. And I'll let Jason introduce himself.
Yep, I am Jason Straight. I'm at Morgan Lewis out of our Boston office. I've been in law libraries for about 3 years. Before that, I was in some mix of academic libraries, museums, and archives. Today, I'm going to be holding down the old school way of doing things in Excel. So we'll see if I can keep up with the robots today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so you should all now be seeing some Excel data. This is what I'm going to be working with today. It's about 17,000 rows of fake job listings. Just kind of, slightly messy data that you can do some good stuff with. So the first thing we're going to do today is to get ready to work with this is we're going to turn it from a range into a table. So if you don't work with tables in Excel, I highly recommend doing so. It gives you some good built-in sorting and featuring options, and also lets you refer to the data by name instead of those annoying cell ranges. And as Jeanette's going to point out soon, this is required for using the AI tools. So the easiest way to do this is just click somewhere in your data and hit Control T. You get a little dialog box that says, hey, where's your data for the table? If it looks accurate, you're good to go, you hit OK. If there's a blank row in your data, Excel will stop at that blank row. It will not continue down to the bottom. So just make sure it doesn't show you like 10 rows or something. You're actually getting all your data. So now we have a table, and this is now ready to work with. And I'm going to throw it over to Jeanette, who's going to get us started.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, are you seeing my Excel file? Jason, yes, no?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
I got it now, yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to show you Copilot. Copilot is Excel's version of AI. When you click on it, it'll tell you what it needs. So we do need to turn on autosave. Great. And it needs to be in a table as well. So Jason showed you how to put it in a table. I'm going to show you how you can do Control T to put it in a table. We're going to hit OK. Great. So everything looks really good. The first thing I want to do with Copilot in Excel is, ooh, I brought up that screen. Am I still sharing?
Yes, I still see it.
Okay, that was weird. Okay, so I'm going to say highlight the whole row in light blue if the state is New York. So it's going to hopefully look for the state. And if it's New York, it'll highlight the whole row for us. What it's going to do is it's going to tell us what it's doing. It tells us it's going to create a custom formula in conditional formatting. And if that looks good, we'll click apply. One of the great things about Copilot is if it does something and it's not what you wanted, there will be an undo button. But this actually looked pretty good and turned it out pretty quick. Jason will tell you sometimes we spent like a while waiting for it to do what we wanted. Okay, so Jason's going to show you how to do the same thing just using regular Excel. So stop, change presenter, and Jason.
Okay. All right, so the old school way of doing conditional formatting, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you've selected the entire data range to which you want to apply the formatting. Since our data is in a table, that's really easy. We click into the table and hit Control A, and that will grab the whole data range. At the top of the ribbon, you should have a conditional formatting button. You just select that, and we're going to do New Rule. There's a few presets you can use, but for this purpose, they will not do the job. And then what are we going to do? We're going to use a formula to determine which cells to format. And then we're going to type in our formula. Now this is going to be the same formula that Copilot came up with. You always start with an equal sign in formulas in Excel. And we're going to tell it if D2 equals New York. So D2, that's column D, and we're always going to start with the top row. Excel knows to interpret that down. So we don't have to tell it the whole range, just the top row, and it's going to interpret that down. And then what do we want to do? Format. We want to fill it with a nice blue color. I'll do this blue. And then we're going to hit OK. And hopefully, it did not do what we wanted it to do. I'm pretty sure I do conditional formatting right, but whenever I make a new one in Excel, on the first try, it's garbled, and then I have to go back and edit it. I've tried to figure out why that is. Couldn't tell you. It changed my D2 to a D1,048,574. I'm just going to edit that back to D2. I'm sure someone on the call knows why it does this. I don't. Apply, and now it's working okay. That's one thing you know, so like Excel, there's weird quirks you're going to encounter when you're working, even if you're pretty confident you're doing it right. Just work around them. Don't panic. They happen to everyone. And now we have this nice formatting. So now I'm going to throw it back over to Jeannette, who's going to go over some options for sorting your data.
Awesome. Thank you. So the next thing, like Jason said, next thing we're going to do is sorting. Let's have it sort salary range, which is over here. The salary range bottom column from highest to lowest. We're just going to type that in, click send, and it's going to think for a minute. So you could do highest to lowest, you could do largest to smallest. Copilot's pretty good about interpreting what you're saying. So this looks good. It's going to apply a custom sort, and we're going to click on apply. Great. It actually looked like it did it. They are still working on the quirk, so it doesn't always work exactly like you would think. So I'm so excited that it's turning out how I would expect. We're going to send this back to Jason now, and he is going to show you how to do this the old-fashioned way.
Perfect. And you are 2 for 2 so far. All right. So one of the things I love about Excel, especially the old-fashioned way, is there's always multiple ways to do things. You can do whichever way is your favorite, or you can forget how to do it and just play around till you find one. So if your data is in a table, the easiest way to sort is to use these drop downs. So we want salary range bottom, click into it, and then sort largest to smallest. All right, that's nice. That looks like it did what we wanted to do. There's other ways we can do this too. So at the top here, you see sort and filter. We can open this. It's going to suggest some options for what you want to do. You can also do this custom sort, which is really nice. If you want to do a multi-level sort, this is the easiest way to do it. So let's sort it by salary range bottom, and then we'll do a next level. We'll sort it on salary range top, largest to smallest, and then hit OK. So you saw a few changes. One other good thing about Excel when you use these sorts, if your data changes, like you're doing some new data, taking out some data, making some edits, you can actually just reapply whatever sort you've set up by going back under sort and filter and hitting reapply. So say we realize this job is actually, pays really, really well, $500 million as the bottom range. Reapply, it now slides up here. So that's really nice because, you can set it once, and then if that data is updated periodically, you don't have to go back and redo that. You just hit one button and you're good to go. So now we're going to throw it back over to Jeannette, who's going to go over filtering options.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. So fun story. I didn't know that about reapply. I was so excited. Another reason I love working with Jason is I always learn something completely new. So now we're going to do filtering. We're just going to do, again, a real simple filter. We're going to filter state by New York. And I put New York in quotes. You don't always have to do that. Sometimes it'll figure it out without the quotes. Again, I was raised with old school Excel, like Excel 95. So quotes are kind of my thing. It again tells us what it's going to do. We're going to click apply, and it sorted the state by New York, or it filtered. I'm sorry, filtered by New York. We're going to toss it back to Jason, and he's going to show you how to do this the old school way.
All right, so filtering again, there's a few different ways you can do it in Excel. The first thing I will point out is at the top, you see this sort and filter box. You actually can't use that. You can use it to sort. If you try to use it to filter, it just turns on and off the filters at the top of your table. Why does it do that? I don't know. Somebody at Microsoft knows. So easiest way to filter is you can open up any one of these drop downs for state, and then there's a couple ways you can do it. You can start typing here what you want to filter by. So NY for New York. But it's important to note that this is a contains search. So I'm going to get NYK as well as NY. I'll have to manually unselect that. Then we get that. Other ways you can do it, you can go up here to text filters, equals, and then manually type it in. This way you don't have to worry about any of that contains logic or anything like that. And you can also use this Boolean and/or logic. So you can sort by, contains New York or New Jersey. And now we see those. There's one other really cool way you can do filters. If you're ever working in your data and you just want to see, well, what else is in Texas? You don't have to go back up to the top. Just right click on any cell. And then you go to filter by selected cell's value. And it'll give you a filter based on whatever you were selected on. So that's a really nice way when you're deep into a spreadsheet just to filter it right on the spot. And then we're going to go back over to Jeannette for everyone's favorite topic, which is formulas in Excel.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, so formulas. One of the good things about Copilot is you don't have to know a lot about formulas to work in an Excel spreadsheet. You can just tell it what you want, and majority of the time it does pretty good. So right now I want it to add a column next to our salary range top and find the average salary between salary range bottom and salary range top. So I'm going to click send. We're going to wait a minute, and then it's going to once again tell us what it's going to do, and hopefully insert a column with the correct information. We'll give it a minute. It likes to take its time. So this looks pretty good. We're going to insert the column once it's all finished and see how it turned out. So it did put in a new column. You will notice instead of using the average formula, which is what I would have done, it did it kind of the way you did in middle school, right? Add the two values and divide by 2. So again, it got there. It just did it a slightly different way. I'll give it a minute to finish up there. One of the other things you can do is you could ask it for information. So let's say I didn't actually want to put my information in a spreadsheet. I can say, how many times does New York or New York City show up in the city column? I will click and hopefully, again, this is kind of hit or miss. Hopefully it'll say New York shows up this many times and New York City shows up that many times. We will see how this turns out. And it did not turn out. Thanks a lot, AI. I've had it work successfully and I've had it not work successfully. In theory, it would just give me the information that I could if I wanted to copy the data somewhere else or just look at it. I don't know why it didn't work. I probably need to ask a better question. Now, Jason's going to show you how to do the same thing the old school way.
All right, so this is the first thing that I can't do exactly the same way the AI did it. There's no way in Excel to just sort of ask questions of your data and get an answer. Everything has to have a place to live within your spreadsheet. So if I want to know how many times New York appears in the city column, I have to make some space for that. I'm just going to add a few rows at the top. All right, so now we have a space for that. So what we need here is a count if formula, which does exactly what it says it does. It counts things if they meet a certain criteria. So whenever you're doing a formula, start with equals, you write the name. I always write them in uppercase, all caps. That is not required. I can do that however I want. It's just when I'm looking at it, I remember what is and what is not a formula. That's just a little stylistic point, but you don't have to follow it. All right, so count with what? Where are we counting? The city column. Now, since our data is in a table, I can refer to the column by the table name. I don't have to know the range. So I can do table 1, square bracket, city. Now it's going to refer that whole data range without me having to know that it extends down to, E 17,284 or whatever. And again, if there's any changes made in this data, this reference will always be accurate. So if that equals New York, count it. And we get 699 New Yorks. One other thing you'll notice though, looking at this data is sometimes it says New York, sometimes it says New York City. I have this one right here which says New York Metro. If I wanted to count all of those, it's really good to know that Excel does accept wildcard characters in certain instances. So I can actually do a New York wildcard, and it's going to count anything that begins with New York. So good to know you can use those, and unlike in a lot of systems, you can use wildcards within quotation marks. It's a very strange syntactical quirk, but be aware of that. So that looks like a pretty good number. I could check it if I wanted to, but I'm going to trust that's accurate. Now, the other formula that Jeanette did was that average. Again, if I want to do that, I have to first manually create that column. Easiest way to do that is right-click on the column to the right of where you want your column to be, and then insert table columns to the left. Excel likes to put things to the left and above, so always either go below or to the right of where you want things to go. And then we're going to label it. I'm just going to call it average. And then here I will use that average formula. Again, equal sign, type it out, average. And then average of what? And then again, we're going to use these references. So I'm not going to type in the numbers. I'm going to refer to cell G4 and refer to cell H4. Close it, enter. And since our data is in a table, whenever you put a formula at the top, it's going to automatically fill it all the way down. A slightly more precise way to do this might be G4 colon H4. That makes it a range. Why is that better? Well, if at later we had like a mid-range salary in a job posting, we inserted it here, capture it. So again, ranges for contiguous data is always recommended. Again, this all looks pretty good. I'm happy with these formulas. I have one question for you, Jeanette, actually, about how the AI works. Do you want to run it now, or do you want to return to it later?
Yeah, go for it.
On the spot. Perfect. I'm going to pass it back over to you. So when you were doing those prompts, you were using those exact column names, right? Salary range bottom, salary range top. Is it smart enough to just say average the salaries? Will it know what to do, or is it going to get tripped on that?
It is definitely going to get tripped on that.
Okay.
We can give it a try. But I have never seen it work successfully, which again is another reason to try to name your column something a little more simple. Yeah, no, it's not done that, but that's a great question. Now I have a question for you, Jason. Do you love pivot tables?
I do love pivot tables, yes.
Me too, but I think we're kind of the outliers, right? No one really likes pivot tables. They can be confusing and complicated. Copilot makes it a little bit easier for you, especially if you don't work with pivot tables a lot. Sadly, Jason and I are straight up addicted and use pivot tables probably way too much. But if you're new to pivot tables, Copilot's a good way to work with them. So what I want to do is I want to take our data and create a pivot table showing the salary range bottom and the salary range top per country. So I hit the send button. We'll give it a minute. It's actually working really quick. I had a bunch of jokes to use in case it was really slow. Like, what shirt size does Bill Gates wear? XL. Get it? It is going slow, so I can use my jokes now. Hey, Jason, why did this spreadsheet open a breakfast cafe?
Why did the spreadsheet open a breakfast cafe?
Because
I don't know,
eggs
Jeanette.
sell. Because eggs sell. So great. So we're
That's
still
a good one.
That's good. I can use some more. A spreadsheet walks into the bar. The barman says, "Should I start a new tab?" Oh, come on. That was great.
That was a good one.
Um, I saved these. Jason hasn't heard them before. So you guys. Okay, so it
She
gave me
saved
the
that for the presentation.
information. It says it's going to look like this: country, the salary ranges. That looks good. Or we can get a summary and just copy that. I actually want a pivot table. So we're going to do add to a new sheet because eggs sell. Hilarious. I tried to ask Copilot online for good jokes and it did not come up with any. So then it gives me a pivot table just with what I asked for. Now Jason is going to show you how to do it the fun way, manually.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So making pivot tables. The first question is, why would you want a pivot table? What does it do? It really gives you a way of aggregating your data and getting sort of like groupings of data. So again, we have 17,000 rows here, but a lot of them have features in common, right? They're in the same country or in the same state or something. So it'd be really nice to be able to get, sums, averages for that about that data in a really condensed way without having to do a whole bunch of formulas. And that's where pivot tables come in. So the easiest way to do it is go to Insert and just click Pivot Table. It's going to ask you what the source is, table 1. Since we have a table, that's good. And then where a new worksheet, that's what we want. And we hit OK. All right, and now you have your blank pivot table, has nothing in it. So now you'd have to sort of drag and drop from the columns what you want. So we know the values we want are the average, salary range, top. So we simply just drag them down to values. It's defaulting to sum. I think that's what most of your Excel users will see. We're going to have to change that to get average. But again, these values are always going to be some sort of operation applied to it. It's going to be a sum or an average or like the min or the max or something. So we go to value field settings and we select what we want. We want average. All right, we have our average and then salary range top. And again, change sum to average. All right, now right now it's just giving us the overall average since we haven't broken it out at all. And now we can use the columns and the rows to break this out more. So I think, Jeanette, you used country, so we'll use country and drag it to rows. So now it's going to break this out. So here's the list of countries, alphabetic, and then it's going to break out these averages over here. You also notice that these don't look like dollar signs. It's just reading them as numbers. So since this is a salary, we want to see it as a dollar sign. We're going to highlight this and change the data type to either currency or accounting. I prefer currency because I'm not an accountant. Some people prefer the accounting style. It doesn't show negative numbers, it just shows them in red. If that's what you like, you're perfectly happy to use that. Right here, it just says row labels. I'm going to change that to say country. All right, so now there's that basic pivot table, but there's a lot of other really cool things you can do. If we wanted to break it out further, you could add additional layers. So under country, let's say we drag state. So now you get that top level breakout by country, and then you get these subtotals by individual states. You could even go further and then do city within the state, and you get all these nice layers. It's really nice, but sometimes you'll notice some things with your data that's kind of annoying. So for some of these countries, oops, not state, countries. So for some of these countries, we have no data. I'd prefer not to see blank data because it's not telling me anything. So you can use those filters and those sorts just like you did on a regular table and a pivot table. So click the drop down, and then we're gonna do some value filters. And we're gonna do if the average of the salary bottom is greater than 0. So that's one easy way to get rid of all those blanks. There are other ways to do it. That's the way I prefer. So now we see we only see in countries where we have no 0 values. Again, some blank where the country wasn't listed. I don't want to see that. So I'm going to go in here and then I'm going to unselect blank, which always flows to the bottom. So now I also won't see data. Oops, I accidentally cleared my other filter. So that's fine. I'd have to go back and re-add that because it does matter the order you add your filters. But in a nutshell, that's what pivot tables are. And now we're going to throw it back over to Jeanette to go over. Wait, no, you're going to stay with me.
Jason's going to tell you about pivot charts as well. I tried
yes,
a couple
thank
of
you.
different ways to visualize the data using Copilot. It did not work well. I could not get it working. I'm sure you can with pivot charts, but so far as my testing went, didn't go great. So Jason's going to show you pivot charts, even though I'm not really gonna touch it.
Okay, perfect. So I will show you how to make a pivot chart. So a pivot chart is just what it is. It's a chart based off of a pivot table. So the one I'm going to make right now is going to use this required education from the job listing, and I'm going to put that into a pie chart. So what we're going to do is we're going to do required education to the rows. So these are all the different types of education that are required. Again, there's no value because we haven't put anything there. So what we really want to know is just how many times these things occur. So we're just going to grab any column we want, doesn't matter. I'm going to grab job ID, and instead of the sum, we're going to get the count. So that's, and again, we don't want it to be money this time, so we're going to turn it back to general. You could do number, but I like general better because numbers going to give you decimal points. I don't want decimal points. All right, so now we see the listings of the different requirements and then the count of job ID. Again, I don't want to see blanks. So if we don't know, don't tell me. All right, so now we have our pivot table, and now we need a chart. The easiest way to do this is go to Insert, and up here you're going to see Pivot Chart. And then you're going to see all these wonderful options. It's going to try to guess what you want. Again, I don't want clustered column. I want a pie for this. All right, now we have this pie chart, but you'll notice at first glance it's kind of a misshapen pie chart. The wedges aren't arranged in any seeming order. That's because this chart is always going to reflect whatever this data is. So if this data is not sorted, the chart won't be sorted. If this data is sorted, the chart will be sorted. So I'm going to go ahead and sort this to get my chart to look nice. I'm going to use more sort options. And then what do we want to do? We want to sort descending by count of job ID. So now you see it's rearranged this chart in a more standard format where it goes from the biggest wedge down to the tiniest wedge. If you want to see the actual numbers in the chart itself, you can add different elements. So just click in there, right click, add data labels. So now we get those numbers. They're a little hard to see, but we can always edit that as well if we wanted to. I also prefer on pie charts not to see raw numbers, but to see percentages. You can do that. So select those data labels, right click them, and then you can change the format. And then instead, we want to show percentage. So now you're going to see, and we also want to make this slightly legible. So let's do, okay, I could make it legible. Unfortunately, my meeting controls are blocking where I can add colors, but you could go over here to change this to white. So that's a really easy way to make this. And what's good about this is this chart will always update when this data updates. So if there's some changes to our here, so say some of these job ads have expired, we don't care about them anymore, just deleting them right now. I can go back over here and refresh the pivot table, and this chart's automatically going to update to match the new data. So that's the good thing about these pivot charts and pivot tables is they're always going to give you a live snapshot of your data whenever you refresh it. So I don't have to worry about rebuilding this chart. If something changes, it's going to just remake itself. And now I'm going to throw it back over to Jeannette for some helpful hints on what to do if you get totally lost or your AI is going out of control.
Yeah. So one of my big things with AI is prompt engineering. The best thing you can do when working with AI in any platform is asking the right questions. One of the great things about Copilot in Excel is there is a view prompts button at the bottom. View prompts lets you see commonly used prompts. You can look by task, whether you're trying to understand something, analyze. You could check multiple boxes, learn, assist, ask. You could do it by job type. So if you're in customer service, it'll give you some options for that, or manufacturing, energy, sustainability, mobility. And they're updating these. So we're hoping to see it flush out a little bit more. But these are nice. Let's say Jason sends me a formula that is like, I have no idea how he did it because I've seen Jason do some pretty amazing formulas. This is nice because it'll break it down and tell you what a formula does. So there's a bunch of different options that I would recommend going through here. And then also Google. If you are not coming up with the right answer in Excel, feel free to Google it. Say, hey, I tried this in Copilot. What would be a better question? Or what questions have you used? There are a lot of people having the same problems. So, yeah, use the prompts, use Google. And then Jason's going to talk a little bit more about how do I for manual Excel.
Mhm. Perfect. But first I'll say that if you were watching Jeanette work with the Copilot prompts, the more you know about how Excel works, the more well you can craft your prompt because you know what to ask for. You know, you have to know that conditional formatting is a thing to know to ask for it with the prompt. So, learning about Excel is still very helpful even if you have those prompts and those prompt libraries. And Jeanette does know a lot about Excel. So what to do if you get stuck? There's a couple of different places. Again, it's Excel, so they put everything all over the place. It's just what they do. At the top, you'll see a search bar. This is a really good place to start if you want to do something and you just don't remember what it's called. So say I wanted to do, average, and I don't remember that the average formula is actually called average. I can just start typing it, and it's going to say, do you mean average? Like, yes, I do. And then it's going to give you that formula for average. One I use a lot is remove duplicates. Ooh, 1 second. Usually when I start typing, it pops right up. Okay, today it's not, so I probably misspelled it. That's odd. Let's try that one more time.
Hit escape.
There we go. Yep, I got it now. So remove duplicates. This is a really helpful thing to use in Excel, but I never remember which tab it lives under or where to go get it. So I always just type it here and grab it. So this will remove any duplicate data from your thing. So you don't really want to report on the same job twice. If it's in there twice, let's chunk it out. We don't have any duplicates. You can also use the Excel help. This is also very helpful. Help, and you have to click help again because you have to really tell it you want help. And again, it gives you this search bar and you can start searching and it'll give you more things. It's going to recommend common things you might want to do. And since I just talking about average, it's going to show me average here because it's very smart. But say I wanted to know more about VLOOKUP. So all I have to type is VLO, it's going to suggest this. Tell me about the VLOOKUP function. It'll tell you how to do it. And it'll also tell you other related functions that you can do. So this is really nice. But again, Google is good. Google's your friend. There's an online Microsoft help forum that has more than just this. There's people on Reddit and things that'll do Excel tips and tricks. I'd recommend looking there. And then the best thing to do if you get stuck in Excel, if you have the time, is just screw around with it. There's usually a solution to what you want to do. You just might not know about it. So just, make a copy of your data first so you don't break anything, and then just start trying things. And then the last thing I'd recommend doing is pass it off to a colleague who knows more than you. Even if you know a lot about Excel, every organization has someone who knows more than you. Find them, copy down their email, and throw work their way. If you are one of those people, don't let anyone know about it, or else you'll get more work coming to your desk. And that's really what I have to talk about, doing the old school way in Excel.
Yeah, do you guys have any questions, concerns? If not, thank you guys so much for joining us today.